Welcome back to another episode of The Right Side Show. I'm your host, Tom McGowan. This is my co-host, Liam. It's been a long time. As you probably know, there was this, thing called the birth of Jesus Christ, and we both celebrate Christmas. So we had some time off for that, but we are back, and we're going to get back to regularly scheduled and uploaded content. So there's been a lot that has happened in the world and is continuing to happen in the world and in the United States, and we are going to get in on some of those subjects right now. Liam, would you like to lead us off?
Well, I think the most pressing issue of the moment is certainly regarding ICE.
Well, sure. You want to talk about what's going on in Minnesota, eh?
Exactly.
I was more Canadian than anyway.
Yeah, it was.
No, I'm trying to get my Midwestern country bumpkin down a little bit more, but I need to work on that. Anyway.
So, I think on January 7th, on January 7th, there was a shooting of a woman in her car by an ICE agent.
Now, this marked, just to interrupt briefly, this marked the first of now I think it's up to 4 or 5 people that have died in ICE-related shootings.
Yes. And this has caused quite the stir, mostly because it took place under disputed circumstances. One side claimed that the ICE officer was just, trigger happy and just killed a random woman who was doing nothing wrong. And the other side claimed that she's a domestic terrorist and deserved to be killed. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. If you would like to see the video, you can go look it up on your own time. There's plenty of footage, many different angles.
We can include links to any of the videos that we reference in the comments.
And my takeaway from this whole incident is...
Do you want to explain a little backwards?
Yeah.
Do we want to explain a little bit background first? Okay. So in Minnesota, not Minneapolis, right now, there are large ICE raids taking place to deport people who are in this country illegally. And we are going to get to the legality of these ICE raids later. We just want to start off with, a very important incident that happened. This lady was intentionally blocking traffic using her vehicle to hinder ICE from moving through her neighborhood. We know this based on testimony from the girl. Was it is her wife or girlfriend was at the scene?
I think wife, but
her partner, at least her partner. It doesn't matter right now. Her partner clearly stated that she was impeding the flow of traffic intentionally to hinder ICE moving throughout the neighborhood.
Which is indeed a felony.
It is obstruction, which is a crime where you cannot hinder a federal investigation, which ICE agents are federal agents. They do not fall under any state or county jurisdiction. The ICE officer, seeing that she was blocking traffic and hindering the operation, gave her a lawful order to step out of the vehicle and put the vehicle in park and step out of the vehicle.
Not to mention that a lot of times at these sorts of protests, they turn a little bit more than just a protest, and there's generally a reasonable fear amongst officers that something could go terribly wrong. And in this case,
it did.
It did.
So before we get into what exactly happened from this point forward, I would like to discuss the legal charge, the crime of vehicular homicide. That is a special part of the law that specifically pertains to crimes committed within vehicles. There's a very large portion of the law that actually pertains to crimes committed in vehicles and around vehicles because they're so intertwined with our day-to-day life. Vehicular homicide is when you intentionally use your vehicle to drive and hit or kill somebody intentionally. There's also vehicular manslaughter and all of the other crimes that go along with vehicles as well. What happened next was Miss Good, Renee Good, the name of the lady who was tragically killed, put her car into reverse, backed up a little bit. Officer then, once she saw that the lady was moving, her car was moving, he then drew a service weapon. She then put the car in drive and drove forward in the direction of the ICE agent. The ICE agent, seeing that this car, which I believe was a Jeep Patriot, an SUV, driving rapidly towards him, opened fire on the car, firing 3 shots into the vehicle, tragically striking and killing Miss Good in the process. Whether or not you believe her intention was to hit this ICE agent with her car or not, The facts stand. She refused the lawful order and drove a 2,500-pound SUV directly at an ICE agent. An ICE agent who, while he was serving a warrant 3 months earlier against a different illegal migrant, was struck, hit, and dragged by a car, requiring 33 stitches once he got to the hospital. Cars, like all things, can be weapons when used in the wrong hands. We do not support Miss Good losing her life. This is tragic. She was
Absolutely.
her father, or the father of these children had passed away some time ago. She was raising them along with her partner, and now the children are orphans. This is horrible. But that having been said, it was a justified shoot.
And I think, not to mention that both sides, the left and the right, were focusing on this woman's intentions. The left claiming that she was, just trying to get out of the way, and that, her wheels were pointed obviously away from the officer, and thus there should have been no confusion at all, something like that. And the right started labeling her as a domestic terrorist and all this kind of stuff. I think both are completely wrong. She's obviously not a domestic terrorist, but she obviously, her intentions are completely unknown. They're not something that you can show one way in the court of law or the other way. And even then, it doesn't matter. In the court of law, it doesn't matter what her intentions are.
She committed a crime.
And it only what matters is the officer, and whether or not in a court of law it can be shown that he was reasonably fearful of his life and acted in self-defense, which this should be a pretty open and shut case.
It is
for that.
Sadly, and I think this sadly for Miss Good, but good for overall society in general. This case is pretty cut and dry.
Absolutely.
We have the body cam footage from the officer that clearly shows that the vehicle started barreling towards him. You can't even see the wheels from where he was standing. Not to mention, if you're in a high-stress situation like that, wait a minute, let me check the wheels on this car to see whether or not the driver is trying to hit me. Like, it's a complete and utter nonsensical argument,
and
it doesn't make sense.
Not to mention, it's if an officer pulled me over or told me that I needed to get out of the car, I know that I will be getting out of the car because that is the officer's order, and he's told me to do so. And refusing to do that is refusing an officer's orders.
Whether or not the order,
you're already on shaky grounds, because if the officer has you asks you to do something lawfully and you refuse, he's not exactly sure what's going to happen. If you're just insane, if you're stupid, if you're going to do something really dumb, or something that could be a danger to himself. So that's a problem.
On the street is not where you oppose a police officer. Even if a police officer gives a illegal order or an unlawful order on the street, you follow it. That is not the place to challenge an unlawful order. The place to challenge an unlawful order is in a court of law with a trial of your peers.
Absolutely.
That is not the place to do it. And that was a very bad decision on her part not to follow a lawful order. There is no excuse as to why she didn't follow orders, except for the fact that she did not like ICE, and she lost her life because of it. And it is tragic as a whole.
Absolutely.
But sadly, this is not the only instance of aggression, outright aggression towards ICE that we have started to see in recent times.
Well, and not even that. The even more problematic was the response to this whole tragedy. I'm not going to let the Republicans get off too easy, because, like I said, they started labeling her as a domestic terrorist and all this, which I somewhat understand because they're trying to protect their agents.
It's not. While I think obviously Miss Good is in the wrong, I think that labeling her a domestic terrorist is the wrong label to use. Criminal, moron, probably more appropriate, but domestic terrorist is a stretch.
However, when we get to the Democratic, when we get to the Democratic response, we have a lot. So Gavin Newsom, the lovely governor of California, posted on his press office Twitter account, state-sponsored terrorism, the afternoon of that shooting. Obviously, they're referring to ICE, calling our own agents, putting themselves in the line of duty, calling them terrorists. And Tim Walz, he also said, quote, "We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to public safety."
What's a threat to public safety is Governor Tim Walz's response to this. And Gavin Newsom, as we have been saying time and time again, is one of the biggest hypocrites on the current political stage. During the COVID lockdowns, he had armed police officers going up and down the beach, kicking people out of the beaches and arresting them. That is infringement, if there's anything. He does not get to comment on whether or not our ICE officers are infringing upon the people's rights. And he is the king of it.
Then, last weekend, Ben Shapiro, the conservative commentator, went on Governor Newsom's podcast, which is generally it's a rather big thing when a Republican is on Gavin Newsom's podcast. Very famously, Charlie Kirk was on that podcast.
Dare I say, absolutely eviscerating Gavin Newsom in the process.
And Ben Shapiro pretty much said, "Governor, I have to ask you, you labeled our federal agents as terrorists. I don't think that's a good thing for the current political situation. You're a smart guy. You certainly know what you're doing. We can't be doing that." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I agree with you on that," and all this kind of stuff. "I don't really control my press office," all this kind of
Which is
nonsense.
Just making up excuses. If you don't control your press office, that's ridiculous.
And then this week, we're back to Trump is trying to start a civil war. He claimed that Trump was using ICE to try to start a civil war.
What's ironic about all these people that have had Trump derangement syndrome, what is it? Trump derangement syndrome? Yeah. Since 2016, when Trump was first elected, is these are the people that are causing the most divisions in the United States right now. Right? There are over, I think 5 or 6 people have died right now as a result of attacking ICE agents. There was an ICE agent who got brutally assaulted when a bunch of people tried to attack him while he was out making an arrest, and they tried to beat him to death with shovels. And he ended up drawing his service weapon and firing upon the people trying to beat him with shovels. This is insanity. I can't believe the response to this. It's absolutely insane.
Perhaps the worst response to it all was the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey. We have for you here one of his speeches, and we shall play that for you right now.
To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. Somebody is dead. That's on you. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying. To the family, I'm so deeply sorry. We're going to be working towards justice as quickly as we possibly can right now. And justice is what we've all got to get. We're going to make sure that in this very difficult moment, we do not take the bait that these ICE agents are trying to create and that the federal government, to be clear, wants.
People are going to want to exercise their First Amendment rights, but please do so safely and lawfully to ensure that we do not have any further tragedy in this city or destruction.
We can show them the kind of courage, bravery, love, and compassion that makes Minneapolis. Let's unite around hope and love and peace and getting justice.
So my favorite part of that video is if you actually look at the police chief's face on the left. It was cropped out in the video. If you actually see the police chief's face, when he says, to quote, "get the fuck out of Minneapolis," he's kind of like taken aback a little bit. And what's crazy right now is so far there has been, I believe, 22 agents of the Minneapolis Police Department that have quit and resigned their positions and joined ICE, federal law enforcement, as a result of their mayor taking such a horrendous stand towards the federal law enforcement doing their jobs.
Yeah. So I I don't think that that's necessarily the best, response, labeling the ICE agents as such, especially because the only reason why people are paying attention to ICE at all is because Trump made it a priority, said, we are going to focus on deporting the criminal illegal aliens. And then the Democratic Party has become rather reactionary. If Trump says something, we do the opposite. So Trump says that we need to get rid of criminals who do horrible things to our
Democrats
citizens.
become the criminals.
Then they say that we now need to not do that. We need to do this. So if Trump says, I support ICE, we don't support ICE. I support this, we don't support that. And so what this leads to is this kind of rhetoric. And like I said, the only reason why ICE is so prominent is because of the Democratic politicians who have decided that this is what they want to base their platform on.
Which, again, is ludicrous considering that Obama and Bill Clinton and a myriad of other Democrat presidents have deported far more people than Donald Trump has.
This is true.
Obama deported well over 1 million people during his term as president of the United States. Trump is not even close to that right now.
And it's partially because at this point we now have the Democrat politicians actively trying to impede ICE, whereas previously they just kind of worked a little bit more covertly. People weren't really paying attention to them. One of the most interesting things that I found out is that Barack Obama in 2015, he actually awarded Tom Homan, who is our current border czar, the Presidential Award for Service for his efforts at ICE, doing so well. And that just shows that, Obama was famously labeled the deporter-in-chief, and there were all the scandals with the prisons and all these kinds of things, the cages, all that.
Which aren't accredited to him at this point, right? A lot of the images that you see from the Obama administration that are floating around on the internet right now have been attributed to Trump. For example, there was a lot of confusion when a ICE deportation facility in Florida labeled Alligator Alcatraz by the people that run it. A lot of the images of people that were in mass containment units with, space blankets on, all packed in like sardines, were actually from the Obama administration and not from the Trump administration.
Yes, and so it's legitimately just turned into this kind of way that the Democrats can oppose Trump. Like I said, it's the Democrats have turned into purely reactionary. There's not really much substance to what their politicians say, mostly because, many politicians do this, but even taking Gavin Newsom as an example, you look at what he says privately versus what he says publicly on his social media, in his speeches, they are completely different. They are not even the same. Whereas if you go and you talk to Trump, the things that he says in private are exactly the same as what he says in public. And the Democrat politicians have been able to take Trump and turn him into this like evil dictator figure in their imagination. And in doing so, have been able to give fear to so many people and take power. The only way that the Democrats are going to beat the Republicans is if they can blame Trump enough as an evil dictator man, so that way they can get back into power, because their policies themselves are horribly well received by the American people. If you look at all the different polls, the American people as a whole tends towards the Republican policies than the Democrat policies.
Trump's approval rating right now is through the roof among Republicans, for the record.
Absolutely, and we're going to get into in a moment the Maduro thing that also happened. The approval rating for that was significantly, and Harry Antonet over at CNN, he was outlining this. The approval rating from everybody was through the roof, except for the Democrats, the Democratic politicians mostly. A lot of Democrats actually were in favor of it. And so,
speaking of CNN, let's circle back to everybody's least favorite and most inflammatory commentator, Don Lemon. Because you gotta talk about Don Lemon. Oh boy. So what happened again in Minneapolis, because of course it was in Minneapolis, is there is a church, and I'm blanking on the name of the church right now.
I don't remember exactly, but
There was
there's a
just this
church.
typical Sunday service where worshipers were coming and the pastor was talking about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And there was a staged, premeditated takeover of the church service where a large group of people, including Don Lemon, who I think
I think it was led by Don.
led by Don Lemon, who views himself as a pseudo war correspondent ever since he got booted from CNN. He has had some truly atrocious takes in the past and was overall just not a very good commentator. He didn't do his research well, and when he had celebrity guests on, he tended to get walked on by everybody that was there, whether or not they were on the left or on the right. Usually they were on the right. Things didn't go well for him, and CNN ended up firing him. He now was on this ground, on the streets in Minneapolis, and he coordinated, I believe, this takeover of the church.
At least he was certainly
A
at
big, huge
the
part
head,
of
at
the
the head of
organizer.
it while it was happening.
While it was happening, he walked in with everybody else, and they started chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot, justice for Renee Good," overall heavily disrupting the church service.
Terrifying people because of
Terrifying people that were there.
Yes, especially their children being terrified, and nobody knows. Everyone pretty much ran out because you don't know if these people are busting into a church. Are they going to start shooting at us?
They were yelling and they were screaming at them. And to Liam's point, there is now Black Panthers in Minneapolis that are outside showing off of guns while wearing, Amazon plate carriers and all other manner of fake tactical gear, trying to intimidate ICE agents as well as other people open carrying combat rifles in their neighborhoods, which I believe in the right to do what they are doing, which is to open carry. I am a Second Amendment absolutist, but they are trying to intimidate every single day people and trying to deter federal agents from doing their jobs, which in my opinion is abhorrent. But back to the church. You then see Don Lemon, while this is all happening, go up and try and interview the pastor while people are running around the church, holding cameras in people's faces and screaming at them, just families and everyday people, And he goes up and he interviews the pastor, and the pastor's like, "This is horrible. I have no idea why you guys are doing this. We are just having a church session. We are just trying to praise the Lord. Why are you guys doing this?" And Don Lemon, being a smartass, tries to go up and be like, "Well, did you hear about this thing called the First Amendment? Have you heard about the First Amendment?" Like that. The First Amendment protects your right to speech and peacefully assemble. It does not protect your right to interfere with other people's rights to peacefully assemble. Not to mention
especially in a church.
Especially in a church, which we'll get to on later, which is a very important point. Church property is not public property. It is highly encouraged that all manner of people come to church, but it is not public property. The church property is private property. They were unwelcome. They were trespassing on private property, committing a disturbance. Now, Liam, would you like to tell everyone why it is so important, especially now for Don Lemon, that they made the mistake of doing this in a church?
So there is something called the KKK Act, which was to, especially revolving around religious services, prosecuting members of the KKK who would take advantage of church services or try to terrorize people in church services in the South or all over the place. And that became a federal act that they could use to prosecute these KKK members because they're terrorizing people, which is a crime. They're violating other people's First Amendment rights to practice religion and peacefully assemble. And the DOJ is now looking to charge Don Lemon and these people with the KKK Act due to terrorizing people during a church service.
Prohibiting, specifically the legal terminology is prohibiting their rights to peacefully assemble, which they were peacefully assembled. And I think that this is a fantastic use of it. And I think that it's about time that the federal government started to crack down on these people because they are running rampant and people are dying because of it.
Absolutely. So, Minnesota has always been problematic place, and it's becoming problematic once again with all this ICE stuff, and it's setting an example for all of the other people who would like to do the same around this country.
Now, on to now that we've covered an aspect of the domestic sphere, now an aspect of the international sphere, which is the removal of President Maduro, the president of Venezuela, from his office in the middle of the night. And there is a lot of moving parts behind the removal of President Maduro from Venezuela. So President Maduro superseded President Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. The election was called into question from the start. His running mates asked for a recount. Maduro very clear, publicly said we're not going to recount it. And since then, he has been running the country into the ground.
There was another election recently, I think just last year, that everyone was pretty sure that the opposition won, and Maduro still said that he won. So.
And it's very easy to say that you won when you're backed by the Venezuelan military, and they have guns that they can use to control the populace. And so he has been an incredibly unpopular president, both in Venezuela and abroad. Venezuela is an incredibly important country in the geopolitical sphere, as they control a fifth of the world's oil reserves, as well as a many other myriad of minerals underneath the surface.
And they've been doing deals with China, actually,
China and Iran.
China and Iran, yes. I believe it was, and Russia. I think right on the New Year, a Chinese delegation was sent to negotiate with them. And since the removal of the president, China has now backed away from any claims that they have in the region at all.
The delegation was actually at the presidential palace during the time of the raid. They were present for it, and they had no prior knowledge of it.
Tom, why don't you give everybody a rundown of how it unfolded?
So, it unfolded as such, and then we're going to discuss after the fact, specifically now that we've been background, why he was removed. More importantly, on top of the corruption and everything else, the raid was unfolded when the United States Navy started moving assets. Basically, they started moving ships, men, material, and equipment in and around the international waters around Venezuela. And on June 12th,
it was January 3rd.
January 3rd, the 160th SOAR, which is a very, very elite unit that are sometimes called the Night Stalkers, a very, very elite helicopter unit coupled with special forces known as Delta Force, inserted themselves into the country, and they went over the city. They went to go to the capital city of Caracas, as they were supported by air assets like F-18s, which are fighter planes from the Navy, other types of attack helicopters. They went in, they destroyed the enemy air defense in Venezuela, and they attacked the presidential palace. The entire raid lasted under 3 hours. I believe it was like 2 hours and 35 minutes from the time of the helicopters taking off from the flight decks of the naval ships to when they landed back on the ships. This was one of the most precision strikes, most precise and well-executed raids that has ever taken place in human history. Delta Force went in. They took out almost all of his Cuban bodyguards, which the Cubans are slightly better trained than the people in Venezuela would be. They went in, killed all of the bodyguards without suffering any casualties. The FBI was attached to the Delta Force team. They went in, they served him the warrant, which we will get into after this. They arrested him. They extracted him out of the presidential palace, flew him to the naval vessels, and the entire raid was finished incredibly fast. This was an incredible demonstration of United States military prowess, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I am incredibly proud of our military for being able to conduct this.
We have some video footage, which we will share now.
abrió la puerta. Marica también.
Flawless execution. The raid could not have gone better. And the reason why, apart from the corruption and all of the other aspects of why Maduro was such an unpopular president in Venezuela and how he was running an illegitimate presidency, Venezuela has become a hub for the drug trade in South America coming to the United States. You see this very early on when Trump started bolstering the Coast Guard to go after narco subs or the semi-submersibles that the drug smugglers have been using to transport large amount of drugs, as well as the speedboats that they're using to transport large amounts of drugs into this country. And they tracked those boats and they tracked those submersibles back to Venezuelan ports. And what the DEA and the FBI found out while through their research and through their reconnaissance was that Colombia and all of these other countries that are famous for producing large amounts of cocaine, now smuggling in fentanyl that was sold to them through China, were coming in through Venezuela. And Venezuela was considered a state sponsor of terrorism by the State Department in 2020. And in 2024, the DOJ, or the Department of Justice, issued an arrest warrant for President Nicolas Maduro for harboring cartels for corruption and drug smuggling throughout Venezuela to the United States.
Yes.
This is a massive, massive win for the United States. Well over 100,000 people tragically lose their lives to drug overdoses every year. And this is a step in the right direction to showing countries in South America and frankly, all around the world, that if the United States wants to, we can reach out and touch you in your own bedroom.
Absolutely. Now, of course, as a standard practice nowadays, everybody in the entire world, except for Vladimir Putin of Russia, Ayatollah Khamenei,
Which he's hitting some hot water now too.
of Iran, which is probably could be as a result of this directly, and all of the Democratic politicians, except for those three groups of people, everybody was super happy.
The Venezuelans in Florida and in all of the states along the coast, there has been huge amounts of videos of them celebrating Maduro being extracted and extradited out of the country. This is a huge win. People are ecstatic about this.
Not to mention, Donald Trump is like the most popular person in Venezuela itself at the moment. They are so happy that Maduro is gone.
Yes, and we hope that this is a step in the right direction and that somebody who is good will fill the power vacuum and have Venezuela start going down the right track.
And of course, the Democrats were complaining that this was some like an illegal operation.
The United Nations that they were talking about how this was a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty. Well, my response to that is all of the drugs that Venezuela was funneling into the United States and all the deaths that were caused by the drugs coming into the U.S. is a violation of our state sovereignty, and this was an act of self-defense.
I mean, a lot of people were complaining about international law. I am of the opinion that there's no such thing really as international law because international law is implicit. It's already understood by states, which is if you want to go to war, you attack somebody. If you don't want to go to war, you don't.
If you want to have trade with somebody, you trade with them. You don't want to trade with them, you don't trade with them. Not to mention the fact that the enforcement of international law is entirely based upon individual countries' interactions with one another. It is useless.
Because I personally, I don't know about you, but I personally don't really care if Somalia has a problem with us doing some cool military operations, because I don't really care. Just like when Obama went in and killed bin Laden, that was a total violation of international law.
We went in and we dropped bombs on Pakistan, a country we were not at war with.
And we did not alert them. We snuck our forces under their radar into the country without telling them, and killed a leader whom they were harboring, and got out before they could shoot any of our soldiers down.
Seriously.
And people were complaining, this is a violation of international law. Well, I don't care. We did what we had to, and I support it. Just because China or Russia don't like what we did doesn't mean that it's not a good thing for us to have done it.
Yeah, you want to know what the thing is that if China or Russia says that we did something wrong, that usually means we're in the right.
Just about.
If whatever China or Russia are doing, usually if they're doing something, it is the right thing to do the opposite of what they are doing. And lastly, I think before we end today, I think it's important to talk about Iran and what's going on in Iran right now, because nobody is covering Iran. What's going on in Iran right now is there are rampant anti-government protests and riots going on right now in response to the Iranian regime's brutal crackdown on civil liberties that has happened ever since the Ayatollah and the radical Islamic jihadists overthrew the Shah way back in the 1970s.
From what we can tell, at somewhere around 10,000, maybe even more, protesters have been killed by the Iranian military.
It truly boggles the mind how many they're crackdown. I mean, they're cracking down on internet. They're cracking down on people's rights to assemble in public. Not to, I mean, what are rights in Iran?
Exactly. The Ayatollah at the moment is terrified.
He's scared. There have been multiple cities that have been, quote, taken over by the protesters who are refusing to cooperate with the Iranian government right now. And I hope it continues. And I believe it is the role of the United States, while I am not a neocon and do not believe that we should be spreading democracy everywhere, I believe we absolutely should be supporting these people. We should be bankrolling them. We should be giving them weapons. We should be supporting them in every way. We should be turning off their internet. Anything we can do to support these people, we should be doing. Because the Iranian, the regime right now, the Ayatollahs and their, political factions that stem from it are horrible people. They have been horrible people. They have morality police that walks around. And if, for example, if women aren't wearing hijabs or head coverings properly, they have a bad habit of beating them to death in public. And right now, if you are, someone in your family is killed by Iranian police and they identify the body, they are making people pay to bury and dispose of the remains of their loved ones that are killed by the Iranian government.
Yeah, so all we can hope as this is developing is that awful government falls and we can take another country off of our list of threats.
Yes, it would be very, very nice to see Iran come out of the dark age that it has been in and join the civilized world as a stable and prosperous, safe country to be in. So, I believe that's everything.
And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to end. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.